pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, Ms. Wilcox, will you please conduct the roll call?
Dr. Bates. Present. Dr. Collins. Ms. Simmons. Present. Mr. Tamayo.
Present.
Mr. Reyes.
Present.
Ms. Guy. Mr. Akil.
Present.
Mr. Ingandela. Mr. Valdez.
Present.
Mr. Urban.
Let the record show that all members of the Citizen Review Board are present, with the exception of Irene Guy, Dr. Collins, and Mr. Ingandela. Typically, we will continue with the agenda under approval of the minutes. However, this is our first meeting of the year, so we will continue with the election of officers. If you will, please.
Good evening, Citizen Review Board. My name is Shirley Fox-Nose, City Clerk for the City of Tampa, and you called the roll already. We will now conduct the election for Chairman and Vice Chairman for the Citizen Review Board. Here are the election guidelines. The election of the Chairman will be held first. Nominations do not require a second. Please wait to be recognized before nominating a candidate. I will open the nominations and close them after all nominations have been made. Votes will be counted by raising the hand. The vote will be taken in the order of the nomination, beginning with the first name nominated. The vote will cease as soon as there is a majority. Having said that, nominations are now in order for chairman. Is there a nomination?
I would like to nominate Chairman Akil for another term as chairman.
Mr. Akil has been nominated. Is there another nomination?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Reyes for chair as well.
Mr. Reyes has been nominated. Is there another nomination?
And I would like to do a self-nomination for Carlos Valdez, myself.
Okay. Is there another nomination? All in favor of Mr. Akil, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the majority. Would you like to say a few words, Mr. Akil?
Thank you.
Okay.
Serving the board has been great under the panel that's been present. I understand every member of this board have showed their dedication over the past few years, and as our new members as they has joined as well, which made it less of a challenge being able to govern such a meeting with members showing their reflection of professionalism month to month. So thank you for your professionalism and your dedication to the city and its citizens.
Thank you. Nominations are now in order for vice chair. Is there a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Ms. Irene Guy.
Ms. Irene Guy has been nominated. Is there another nomination?
I'd like to nominate Colonel Reyes.
Colonel Reyes has been nominated. Yes.
I nominate Mr. Valdez.
Mr. Valdez has been nominated. Is there another nomination? All in favor of Irene Guy, please raise your hand. Okay. All in favor and up for Colonel Reyes, please raise your hand. Okay, and all in favor of Mr. Valdez. Okay, Colonel Reyes, congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Thanks.
Okay. All right, congratulations to everyone, and I'd like to turn the meeting back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now continue with the agenda under item D, approval of the minutes from the October 26, 2021 meeting. Are there any questions or provisions? Hearing none, I would need a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the October 26th meeting.
Mr. Tamayo has made a motion to approve the minutes of the Tuesday, October 26, 2021 meeting. Colonel Reyes has seconded the motion of approval of the minutes of October 26, 2021. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will continue with the vote. All in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed, please show by raise of hand. The motion passes. Let the record reflect that Dr. Collins is present. Next on the agenda is item E, public comment. Are there any participants signed in for the public comment portion of this meeting? Is there anyone downstairs?
There's no one to my knowledge downstairs for public comment.
I will now ask whether there were any recorded comments for this particular meeting.
There are no recorded comments.
And are there any written comments for the public comment portion of this meeting?
There are no written comments.
That will conclude the public comment portion of our meeting. We do have present Chief Delgado. So I will move that we continue with item G on the agenda under Community and Tampa Police Department matters. And we will table item F after G. If you will, Chief Delgado.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody doing? Okay, so I'm here to give you, I promised you all an update on that SAFE program that we did with several months back when we addressed it with council. And then I went back to council and explained some of the changes. So I don't know if you were up to speed on the changes, but I told you I'd come back and give you the final version of where we're at with it and how it's being launched. So, so when we looked at that apartment complex and what we were doing with Crime Free to try to identify some of the violent acts in the apartment complexes and reduce crime, we took an opportunity to look at everything we do. Not only that, just Neighborhood Watch. We have a Business Watch program as well that we operate to help businesses. And so we took all three of those and made this one bigger program that we identified as the SAFE program, and incorporated all three aspects of that under one big umbrella. So now all of the Neighborhood Watch, all of the Business Watch, and all of the multi-housing apartment complexes fall under a bigger umbrella of this SAFE program, and they each individually, while they do a lot of the same things, obviously because of how they're structured, some of them have some differences, and I'll go through a few of those things. The notifications that we were sending out on arrests on property are no longer being sent out. So we've been able to create, through technology, a digital portal, basically, where any neighborhood, whether you live in West Tampa, East Tampa, Culberth Isles, or Sulphur Springs, you can go online and put in your neighborhood, and in that portal, you'll see every single police activity that's happened in your grids of your area. So if you lived in a multi-housing unit of Silver Oaks, and you drop down and pick Silver Oaks, everything that's happening in that complex would be, you'll see it on a spreadsheet, no addresses, no nothing. What you're gonna see is the date, the time that the offense occurs, or whether we do a foot patrol in that neighborhood. You're gonna see it. And then what's gonna make it a safe event is that there's 8 felony crimes, right? That if that happens, it'll just identify that it is a safe event, meaning there was some sort of felony case where an arrest was made on that case, and that's really all you'll see on that database. If you're part of the SAFE program, which means if you're Business Watch, or you're an apartment complex, or even a neighborhood watch, we've redone the training program, right? So we're gonna reissue out a brand-new training program to every place in the city that wants to be a part of it. So we'll start scheduling those through the districts here shortly. Once we get through some parades here we got in the next couple weeks, these meetings will be scheduled throughout the city for neighborhood watch groups to go, or apartment complex managers to go to. And part of that is going to be how to navigate through that website. Part of that is going to be, we're gonna offer CEPTED training to each and every one of them, which is that crime prevention through environmental design, which if you have a apartment complex and we go out and do a CEPTED, it may say you gotta cut your trees down to increase visibility, or increase lighting so people can park safer, and it deters criminal activity. We're gonna give those apartment managers, neighborhood watch coordinators, that type of guidance in the CEPTED program, that if they start making steps towards that, one of the benefits of that will be that those online cases, right, that qualify under SAFE, meaning those 8 felony cases that happen on the property, right, that we identify that just that case has happened with a yes, on that portal, they'll have access to the online reporting system, which they can request a report online, just like any other citizen could. But it's gonna filter through Captain Brian Hill, who is I brought him to council with me to go through. He is the captain that has this program currently. Those requests will go to Captain Hill, and as long as it qualifies for that, they won't be charged a copy for that report, right? We want to run that through Captain Hill so nobody abuses that and asking for a copy of somebody's friend's report that they're trying to get for free. It's the same public access report as anybody that can get it. The only benefit of that program is that we won't charge them for that copy of that report being under this program. If they're going to take some steps to help us make their property safer, increase lighting, like I said, make sure the locks that the residents are living in on the doors, the locks are adequate, the windows are adequate. If they're doing those things that make those communities safer, we're not going to charge them for the reports that they want to see that's happening on their property. So another benefit that we want them to do is those front porch roll calls. I know each and one of you all are probably very familiar with those front porch roll calls, not roach calls, roll calls. And now with COVID calming down a little bit and we're able to get out a little bit more active, we're picking those up. So we're asking communities to start looking for those. You can go online and request a porch roll call. Part of the SAFE programs, we want these communities to do that at least once a month and have our officers doing roll calls in their neighborhoods, meeting the residents, talking to the residents, instead of just having our roll calls in a building. We want to be out in the community talking to them. So we encourage all of these communities to do them at least once a month as part of the program to keep their involvement in the SAFE program. So,
Chief, what times generally are the roll calls conducted?
So they vary throughout the districts, but for the most part, it's like 6 in the morning, which may not be the appropriate time for a porch roll call because people either not awake yet or already gone to work. 2 in the afternoon is the evening shifts for the most part on each district, and then 7 o'clock at night is and usually that's the most popular request is the 7 o'clock at night. But if we wanted to coordinate something at 5 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, we can, if with enough notice, I could tell a squad to coordinate that, and that wouldn't be a problem. So we are seeing an increase in the requests coming in, which is a good thing. And we get nothing but positive feedback the more that we do in those communities with porch roll calls. So it's just a way for our officers to get to know the residents in there, and the same thing for them to really get to know who's patrolling their neighborhood on a daily basis. So those are some of the main changes that we've made to the program. Again, you're going to see it kick off here. It's ready to go online. The IT department's doing a little bit of tweaking on the mapping. We're trying to incorporate a map as well. So if you picked your neighborhood, if you pick your neighborhood watch group that you belong in, to the side of that, you'll see the map of the activity there, so you can visually see what's going on and where it's happening in your neighborhood. So as soon as they finish tweaking that, you'll see it get posted online, and we'll announce it through social media that it's live and ready to go. So, but that replaces those forms that were talked about. That replaces the any indication of if an officer mistakenly notifies them of a misdemeanor. That won't happen because the system is doing it automatically through our CAD system. So there's only certain calls that are coded that will go into that system as an arrest case. So it takes all of that error out of it.
Question.
Sure.
As it relates to the data
Valdez.
and the tracking, there was an article that came out on spot crime, or regarding spot crime, that there was some data that was removed, or,
Yeah.
and they're concerned about transparency issue and whatnot. Can you talk about?
I'm glad, thank you for asking about that.
if
Because
you can
it was in the
shine
creative
some light.
loafing. So here's what that is. There's two, our website has two programs. One is run, it's a calls for service program, which is any call for service. And then one is a reporting system, right? So Lexisnexis is a third party at which most agencies go through Lexisnexis. They have one, and then our T&I department internally has a website as well, or a link that you can go see maps of the calls for service. So both of them, and Lexisnexis has fixed theirs faster than we did. Ours is back up now as of 3 o'clock. So what we learned was when you scrolled down into an area, and it was allowing you to scroll in so close that you could see the houses, right? If you've ever been on Google Maps, you can, the closer you get to the neighborhood's view. Well, we learned that it wasn't offsetting some of the crimes because there's cases like rape, there's cases like domestic violence, there's cases like child abuse that we don't publish the victims' names in that, just for the safety of them. So these were actually identifying the houses where that was happening instead of offsetting it into the 100 block. So like I said, with Safe Program, you'll know if you lived on Lincoln Avenue, right, and something happened at your house, you're gonna see something happen on that 100 block of Lincoln Avenue and not your specific address, right? So that's what these were doing. So we pulled ours off-site temporarily to fix that. So once T&I had a solution where it offsets it on the 100 block and puts it in the middle of the street and not identifies, because the potential of identifying a rape victim at their house, right, was something that we didn't want happening so anybody in the public can see it. So that was what that was about. It wasn't about hiding data, it was a technical issue that we found that we had to find a fix for.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Delgado in reference to the Safe Event Program? Well, I'd like to thank you for acknowledging the concerns of the citizens, pros and cons. And I understand the heavy responsibility of reducing crime without profiling and gaining support of property owners without punishing the innocent of the resident occupant. I also applaud the update, and I'm confident that the program will continue to take shape to reduce crime and protect the innocent. Ms.
Thank you,
Collins?
sir.
Oh, you're agreed. So thank you for coming out, and if we'll follow up with Captain Hill in the future, and we'll continue to monitor and support this program.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Thank you, Chief Delgado.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Chief.
We will now continue with the scheduled agenda. Moving to item F, review of investigation. Tonight, we will be reviewing case number 19F007.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Detective DeGagny with Tampa Police Department Internal Affairs Bureau. Today, I'm going to be going over, like you said, Mr. Chair, 19F-007. This is a case involving 4 violations. It's MOR 1807, which is failure to comply with departmental policies. SOP 609.9, governing the body-worn camera recording equipment. Standard of conduct, which is MOR 1005, as well as incompetence, MOR 1201. On June 25th, 2019, at 01:33 hours, Officer Antoine Nelson conducted a traffic stop on West Hillsborough Avenue and North Hoover Boulevard for a faulty equipment violation. The driver/complainant was a 22-year-old college student, female. The stop lasted approximately 18 minutes. During that stop, Officer Nelson told the driver that she had a warrant for her arrest and even took out his handcuffs from his pouch.
Detective,
Yes.
I'm loath to interrupt you.
I'm sorry. Yes.
But
Well, Mr. Tamayo?
you indicated on June 25th there was a stop?
According to my notes, is that incorrect?
No, my understanding is that the incident occurred, I believe it was the 5th of August,
6.
or the 6th of August.
Okay, I do apologize. My notes were incorrect. Then that is the correct date. I stand corrected on that. Thank you, Mr. Tamayo.
If you will, please continue.
Yes, sir, thank you. So Officer Nelson told her that she had a warrant, and let this go on for about 5 minutes, but the lady did not have a warrant. He was in fact joking with her, and he finally let her know this 5 minutes later. Officer Nelson continued to display his lack of professionalism and inquired about her ethnicity and asked her irrelevant questions regarding her parents. Officer Nelson asked her personal questions regarding her relationship status, which is extremely appropriate given the circumstances. He even asked her the inconceivable question, what would she do to get out of a ticket? And asked her how savage she would get. This made the young lady extremely uncomfortable, and she immediately interpreted this as sexual. So a control call was conducted by professional standards, which substantiated her claim that she did have his phone number, because at the end of the traffic stop, he had asked her for her phone. She willfully gave it to him, and he put his personal number in her phone. So again, that control call was conducted by professional standards, which again showed that she had his cell phone number. So even though Officer Nelson did have a body-worn camera at this time, he failed to activate that, so therefore it did not capture any of this police interaction, which was very disturbing. So Officer Nelson did respond to the Professional Standards Bureau Internal Affairs and review the evidence on 9/20 of 2019, and he submitted a resignation on 9/22, 2019. An interview was never conducted. Officer Nelson did get his law enforcement certification revoked by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And I just want to tell you, there was no disposition letter written on this case because the officer resigned. That, of course, is not protocol now, as we complete disposition letters for all formal investigations despite the officer's resignation.
Repeat that last statement.
If you will, Ms. Collins? If you will.
No, just repeat the last statement.
Yes, ma'am. So no disposition letter was written in this investigation. This happened back in 2019, so it was a couple years back. So at that time, they did not do the disposition letters for officers that resigned. Of course, we've changed that, and we do, if an officer resigns during an investigation, we do the disposition letter now, but unfortunately, there was not one done here.
Any other questions in reference to this particular case?
So,
Mr. Tamayo?
Detective, this certification was revoked on the basis of this case alone, correct?
Yes. The all incompetence and all of those. Yes, so they did. They did. And I believe I think there was a question regarding the Magarosi case. I think last time. I think Todd Magarosi, Reverend Banks. I think you had that question whether his certification was revoked. We have a hearing on February, I think 16th, I believe, with FDLE in Orlando, and they're going to be reviewing that case as well. So just wanted to get back with you on that.
Question.
Yes.
Was there
Well,
any,
Mr. Valdez?
any prior incidents with this officer that may have resulted as a red flags that there could be something, down the road?
As far as discipline history, I do believe he did have a discipline history, but as far as red flags, I can't really answer that question. What do you mean exactly?
Some sort of other behaviors, either to this effect or to
I'll let Captain answer that.
another type of incident.
Yeah, Officer Nelson, prior to that, was a couple of years, was accused of excessive force in Ybor City, and he was terminated for that, but through arbitration, he was able to get his job back. And Captain Schoolmeisters, good evening, everybody, so yes, he did have, but an arbitrator ruled that he got his job back.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, I've got a couple questions.
If you will, Vice Chair, Mr. Reyes.
Yes, Mr. Reyes?
Yes, thank you. I want to kind of follow up on that last concern that was raised, because and this is, I guess, a procedural question on my part. I'm trying to get educated on it. So when I looked at 1201 for the professional conduct, it appears that some of the sub-criteria for that, to meet that, are so many, it's quantitative, so many types of unsatisfactory evals, or documented and sustained violations, or a combination of 4 or more occurring within a 2-year period, if I read that correctly. So, sir, I think you had mentioned earlier that there was a previous incident that he had. I couldn't quite hear at the end what happened, something about arbitration. I guess my point is there a recorded history or past violations of conduct, egregious conduct that this police officer had, which then justified him falling under 1201?
Yeah, I believe, and I'd have to look at it, but I believe it was within that 2-year period. And also, they have those 4 more violations. It doesn't mean over several events. It could be just one event.
I see. Okay. And then my second question is, as a result of this and probably other type of incidents that you may have experienced, what type of sensitivity training do the officers, as part of your curriculum, your training, your police training, in these types of situations, do they undergo, or you put
No, I
them
mean,
through?
there's no training that could prepare for this. I mean, he obviously acted way out of his scope as a law enforcement officer, and that's why he was terminated. Because the questions he asked was probably every female's worst fear when they get stopped by the police. But we acted swiftly, investigated, did the controlled call, and then, he resigned, but then we followed up through, because the detective did a good job, and he, sat in on the hearing for CJSTC to ensure that his certification was revoked, which it was. But every officer goes through, training, especially in the FTO program. They get trained on how to conduct a professional traffic stop and not this, but he went way outside the lines, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
If you will, Dr. Collins.
Yes, his certification was revoked, therefore he would not be eligible for hiring. TPD, and since it's revoked from the state, is that record will then follow him?
Oh, yeah, in the state of Florida, he'll never be able to get a job as a police officer again.
So he wouldn't be able to use Florida as a reference if he went in another state?
Well, if that state did its homework and then followed through, yes, they would discover that. It'd be easier to discover that it was revoked. And then usually too, when another agency hires somebody, and if he says he was a police officer, say at Tampa, they call us. They call the Internal Affairs or Professional Standards Bureau and ask about their history.
Okay, so
Which
the fact that it occurred in 2019, if he went to get employment in 2024, that would still be the fact that he was revoked in the state of Florida, and that he was terminated, and had not been, he resigned but would have been terminated from
Yeah,
Tampa.
correct. If any time, an officer resigns during an investigation, we still send the form to the state, to the Criminal Justice State Training Committee, and then they determine. So anytime we do a resignation, or that, under, either we terminate them or they resign while under investigation, we still send that form and we still follow through to make sure that their certification's revoked. If it rises to that level, and then they have a hearing and they determine whether to revoke it or not.
And I thought so, but I just want to make sure the audience watching also heard that. Thank you.
Captain and Detective, I just want to make sure that we're accurate in our reporting of dates, and the reason why I'm asking that is that I noticed that the detective indicated the incident as June 25. As I read on through the case, Officer Nelson was on ANN leave for the month of July. So what's ANN leave? I just need to ask that.
That's our annual leave, so vacation time. or
Okay, so
P- or
annual leave,
Commonly known as PTO in the private sector.
right,
paid
for the
time off.
month of July, we informed him we had to do the review quickly due to his absence. So that would make sense if the incident were on June 25, because he was on ANN leave and they had to do the review quickly due to his absence for ANN leave. So did the incident happen in August or in June? And I'm just doing that as a clarification because we need to be accurate on dates of incidents and
Yeah,
and that he was also not informed of the complaint.
Okay, so I'm sorry, yeah, it's gonna be August 5th, 2019 is gonna be the incident date according to records here.
Okay, August 5th.
So it was, and according to the CAD call, that was my fault, I did give you the wrong date, I do apologize about that.
Okay, but I'm just wondering why they had to do the review quickly due to his absence. Which absence? Because he was absent on ANN leave before this incident even occurred.
Well, on that, we'll have to look back, because that was done under a different captain and a different time, so we're just going off the detective's notes that they wrote,
Okay.
but we can get back with you and to answer that question.
Okay, but also why he was not informed of the complaint, why Officer Nelson was not informed of the complaint?
Well,
Why
initially,
would that happen?
well, by law, we only have to inform them right before their interview. So the detective did a controlled phone call, which is, they had her call Officer Nelson on a recorded line to confirm, and so we could get that evidence. So
Okay.
you obviously don't want to notify that person.
Okay. And then also, on the body-worn camera, is it standard operating procedure in a traffic stop that the body-worn camera be turned on?
Yes,
It is.
yeah, absolutely. Anytime we have what they call law enforcement activity, if you have an interaction with the public, then they need to turn that camera on. And during this case, this was when we only had 64 of the body-worn cameras, the Axon 2's out. That was still in our trial period. But now with the Axon 3, we have actually a signal device in the officers' cars. It's a Bluetooth device, so when they activate their lights, it sends a Bluetooth signal, and it will turn on any body-worn camera at the minimum of about 30 feet.
Very good.
Understand that the officer also resigned during the investigation itself. What other options, officer that is under review or have a complaint, what other options are they able to explore while under investigation?
Well, sometimes they want to be interviewed by us. That's why when he went in and he saw the evidence that we had, especially the controlled phone call, he knew that he was gonna get terminated. So a lot of times people will resign, or officers will resign before we get a chance. The Magarosi case that Detective DeGagny, he was the same thing. He came in and see all the evidence that we gathered, and we saw, so instead of answering our questions, he resigned on the spot.
Hypothetical, if this was, and not to degrade this case at all, but if this was a more severe case and the officer was able to resign, that would not void them out from being charged in a criminal court as well.
Yeah, correct. If there was evidence that he committed a criminal violation, yes, it would be referred to the state attorney's office, and then they would decide whether criminal charges were warranted and would bring against him. But the officer, he resigned. We can't stop, obviously, people from resigning. So normally, he knew he was gonna get terminated. So other than going in and saying or talking to us, he just chose the easy path out for him.
If you will, Reverend Banks.
If he was eligible, could he have retired and received his pension?
Yes.
Really?
If he had more than 10 years of service in, he could have, because they can only revoke your pension on certain things, in which if he does something criminally under the color of his authority or his office, then that can be revoked. But if it's not criminal, then yes, he would have been eligible.
And how long had Officer Nelson been on the force?
He probably, at that point, maybe 8 years?
That's including.
Yeah, that's including the whole thing because, yes, correct.
Back to the question on the pension. So is that a Tampa PD policy or
No,
is that a
state
standard?
statute, state statute.
Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I selected this particular case to shine light on the importance of the integrity and moral obligation an officer must reflect to his citizens, and for members of this board who will have the opportunity to participate in the interviewing and hiring process with the new adopted ordinance. These are some things that we may want to reflect after hearing cases of this nature, taking that information and moving forward when one have the opportunity to participate in such program as well. Any further discussion? Can I have a motion?
What are we moving on? That we agree with his resignation?
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. So regarding this action, since the officer resigned, the board there was no disposition letter that was provided in this case. But instead, if the board has any recommendations that they would like to provide to the chief of police regarding this particular matter, but there's no motion per se that the board can make on this case since the officer resigned before the conclusion of the case, and there was no disposition letter.
Thank you, Ms. Kamaria. If you will, Dr. Collins.
Attorney Kamara, since this was a 2019 case, had that case been this year, 2022, the disposition letter then would have been written, and even though he resigned, we still could have agreed with it? Because I thought they indicated that they.
Good evening, Captain Schoolmeisters. Yes, and when I can attest, since I've been here for 2 years, every case that we investigate, the disposition letter is completed. Like I said, this was done before my tenure there, so I can't speak for that, but I can, since I came in 2020, every case will have a disposition letter.
Thank you, Captain.
And so, Dr. Collins, just to further that conversation, if there was a disposition letter, then certainly the board would be in a better position to make a motion regarding whatever resolution or information that was provided in the disposition letter.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much.
Question,
If you will, Reverend Banks.
is it standard operating procedure to follow through with the state to ensure, to the best of your ability, revocation of their certificates? Or is this just a special case, or is it something that uses a barrier to rise to a certain level?
Yeah, Captain Schoolmeisters, again, Professional Standards Bureau, yes, every time like I mentioned earlier, every time an officer resigns under investigation, the form is filled out and sent to the state so they can look at it and see if that rises to a level where they can revoke the officer's certification.
I thought you mentioned that someone was in attendance at a hearing.
Yes, yeah, normally we'll be notified. Not all cases get taken to the board for the hearing, but when one does, we are notified. It's held usually in Orlando, and we usually attend it by phone, so we can listen to it, and if they have any questions, then they could ask us about it. The detective on this particular case did that, and then the follow-through, the certification was revoked.
So I guess my question is, was that standard operating procedure?
Yes.
Was this, okay.
Yes. Such as something like this, yeah, obviously any time an officer, even if it doesn't even rise to that level, is we still send it and let the state make that final call.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, any further comments, statements the board wishes to share? Being that no motion is necessary, we will not continue with the vote. We'll move on with the agenda under item H, CRB staff reports and business. Understand that We still have some additional training that needs to take place in reference to the new ordinance. I believe Mike Schmidt will continue with that.
Good evening, Mike Schmidt, Assistant City Attorney. Tonight, we want to talk about a couple of things. First, I'd like to tell the board a brief update. Lieutenant Kim Hill has been here before to discuss the hiring process, and she has given presentations to this board prior to some of the new members coming on. However, in December, she was able to meet with the new members individually. Even though we didn't have a meeting, she was able to talk to them about the hiring process. So we did not feel that she needed to come and repeat the whole thing again. If anybody has questions about the hiring process, Lieutenant Kim Hill can certainly come back before this board to answer any of them. As an update, there is a current hiring process ongoing. Vice Chair Irene Guy has attended the most recent hiring process. She's participated. Obviously, we know Dr. Collins participated in the first round of the hiring process. So far, it's moving along. And obviously, as we've discussed before, there's been a sign-up sheet, and TPD is just going to, every time there's a new hiring panel of recruits, TPD will make sure to call the next person on the list and see if they're available, and we'll go through the list so that all of you get a chance to participate in the hiring process. Again, if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me. We'll make sure we get you in touch with Lieutenant Kim Hill, but the day that you are called and asked to attend and participate, if you're available on those dates, Lieutenant Kim Hill will certainly walk you through the process and explain everything then. And I believe we've also received some materials from the department in the past. So I think everybody should be comfortable in this, and we've already had 2 successful participations by this board in the hiring process. So we appreciate that. Also want to give you an update that there was we had 3 members who participated in the December Citizen Academy. And so we are appreciative of the 3 who have done so. Devin Ingandala is now fully certified. Carlos Valdez has participated and was able to complete the class and is fully certified. And Mr. Irvin unfortunately started the class but was not quite able to finish. We're going to make sure we reschedule he's got one final class he still needs to attend. So he will have 6 months to get that done and we'll make sure we get another class scheduled so that he can get fully certified within his 6-month window. As you know, in December 17th was the date of the ordinance taking effect. After it passed in June, it was given a 6-month period of time until it took effect. So this is the first meeting under the new ordinance. So with that, one of the things we wanted to talk to you about tonight was the complaint tracking system. One of the, we've obviously been giving updates prior to tonight about different things that are going to be in the ordinance. Tonight, what we want to talk to you about is the complaint tracking system. And under 18.8C3 of the ordinance, it states that the complaint filing and tracking system is one of the duties of this board. And that duty is for this board to be informed of the filing of complaints concerning allegations of police officer misconduct and to monitor and track the status of such complaints from inception to completion and to allow for such complaints to be filed directly with the CRB. So that is the duty of the board for the complaint filing and tracking system. Now, under 18.8G3, it sets out the procedures for how this duty is to be followed. And under that section, it states, for the complaint tracking system, on the first business day of each month, the department shall provide to the chair of the CRB in paper or electronic format, and yeah, I apologize. There we go, we're putting it up on the screen for you. Provide to the chair of the CRB in paper or electronic format, 1, a list of all new complaints received by the department in the preceding month, and 2, a list showing the status of all pending investigations in the department's Professional Standards Bureau. Provided, however, both lists and any other information provided to the CRB shall first be redacted, and all information shall be removed which is confidential or not subject to disclosure under Florida statutes, public records, or Police Officer Bill of Rights, or any other applicable state law. It then explains that complaints concerning allegations of police officer misconduct can also be submitted to via email to tpd-crb@tampagov.net. It says that the inbox on a weekly basis is going to be checked. And complaints about police officers may also be made as set forth in Standard Operating Procedure 651. So, tonight, what we wanted to do is make sure you understood what your duties were, as I just discussed, as well as the procedures for those duties. Since this ordinance came into effect, the first report would have been due the first business day of January. So that report was sent to Chair Quill per the requirements of the ordinance. Captain Kevin Schoolmeisters is here tonight to talk about how the list was sent to Chair Quill, explain the list, and then answer any questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Kevin Schoolmeisters.
Thank you, Mike Schmidt. And I believe everyone should have material in reference to the complaints that I received. It should be, yes, it should be in the paper clip. There should be 2 pamphlets in that paper clip. If you was to turn to the rear of that paper clip, you'll see two pamphlets, one open and pending formal cases, and the other is the complaint tracking.
I also provided each member with a copy of our SOP that regards the Professional Standards Bureau. The members who are on the board longer have already been through this training, so so you could read this and understand how we handle complaints, how they're tracked, and how they're investigated. So I have provided everybody a copy of that standard operating procedure. I also provided everybody a copy of the monthly reporting that we sent to Chairman Akil. But I will tell you, but first of all, I just want to address the board as I am being transferred effective February 6th, going back to the street. I'm, at the end of my career, and going to District 1, which is Sector B, which is South Tampa. So what I want to do is introduce the new captain who will be taking my spot. This is Captain Messmer. You're in good hands. He's very thorough. He's also the chairman of the pension board, so if any pension questions, he's the person to ask. But it's been a pleasure serving here and serving, the city of Tampa and making sure our officers do what they're supposed to be doing. Would you like to say a couple words?
Just to introduce myself again, I'm Pat Messmer. I'm the captain up in Sector C, which is District 2, everything Bush Boulevard up north to the county line. I was actually in front of the board late last year presenting a case on an officer who resigned due to a relationship with a violent felon. So I've been with TPD about 17 years now. I'm a captain for a little over a year and a half. Formerly, I was in the Special Operations Division. I was a traffic homicide detective. I've worked every district in the department, so this will be and like Captain Schoolmeister said, I am the chairman of the Firefighters and Police Officers Pension Fund as well. So yeah, any pension-related forfeiture questions, I'll be more than happy to address those as well. So look forward to being here in the future with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if you could please turn to page 2 of the, yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your service to us as well. Just wanted to do it all in the same vein.
Oh, you're welcome, ma'am.
Appreciate working with you as well, Captain Summer. Okay.
Thank you.
And you're gonna go to Did you say where you were going?
District 1, Sector B, which is basically Kennedy to the south, to the Air Force Base.
You're in my district, thank you.
If you ever need anything, please. I'll be in District 1. But if you could please turn to page 2 of our standard operating procedure on the Professional Standards Bureau. Just kind of want to highlight of what cases that we're required to investigate by our policy, which is, and I'll mirror that with one of the reports that we provided, so you can kind of at least get an understanding of the reports, because a lot of these have basic information. Like according to the ordinance, if it's an active case, they're covered by the Officer Bill of Rights, the officers are, and we're very limited on what we can say. It's confidential until the point that it's over. But going through, and I'll just read this, violation of department rules or procedures, allegations of minor violations may be logged by Internal Affairs Unit, which we put into our AIM computer system, and then we refer it to the division supervisors for investigation. Any substantial or complex investigations will be investigated by us, the Internal Affairs Unit. 2, complaints made by employees of another law enforcement agency. 3, acceptance of a bribe, gratuity, or legal compensation. 4, use of illegal drugs. 5, any unnecessary or excessive response to resistance. 6, harassment, rudeness, discourteous, or verbal abuse. Allegations of a less serious nature may be logged, again, by the Professional Standards Bureau and referred to the division supervisor for investigation. 7, any abuse or misuse of authority. 8, discriminatory conduct such as sexual harassment, racial ethnic slurs, and bias-based profiling, etc. 9, untruthfulness. 10, all discharge of firearms by TPD personnel, whether intentional or unintentional. 11, death or life-threatening injury of a person in police custody. 12, death or life-threatening injury caused by or attributed to police actions such as a pursuit. 13, death or life-threatening injuries caused by or attributed to the use of our precision immobilization technique, or we commonly refer as the PIT, or death of a life-threatening injury caused by or attributed to use of a stationary roadblock to terminate pursuit. And then I'm sure you have questions of what the PIT or the precision immobilization technique is during the pursuit. As long as they don't exceed 50 miles an hour and there's other criteria, let's say an SUV, that's when the police car pulls up next to the car that we are pursuing and then turns in at the right rear quarter panel or the left and causes that pursuit vehicle to spin.
How well do we remember that? We experienced it.
Yes, we practice it, on out of the driving pad, and it's, so all the officers are trained in it, so. 4, which we've recently obviously had in a previous case, sex on duty, and then 15, other acts of a serious nature in any matter as directed by the chief of police. We call these formal investigations. There was only one person at the Tampa Police Department that can authorize a formal investigation, and that is the chief of police. If, let's say, and it was listed earlier, if it's a complex case, what normally happens is that major of that district then comes to staff, which they hold weekly, and explain it, and then it's up to the chief whether he, keeps it in that district to investigate or whether he refers it to us. Such examples, if there's quite a few witnesses or, for interviews, then that normally comes to us to handle. So if you're looking at the first report that I furnished, those have listed is our formal cases, and again, those are determined by the chief of police. And a couple listed are the required by policy, which would apply any of those other examples that I went over. This is one of the reports that these are all the active open investigations that the Professional Standards Bureau is conducting currently. But like I said, it's very vague, but it has to be that way for the Bill of Rights. And then I'm going to move on to D, which is our service-related inquiries. Service-related inquiries are only generated by the Professional Standards Bureau. Less serious minor violations or inquiries from citizens based on misunderstanding of the law, established procedure, or investigative techniques. These will be immediately addressed by the appropriate supervisor. Service-related inquiries may include, but are not limited to, 1, inadequate investigation, such as failure to dust for prints, failure to interview all witnesses, 2, questionable response times, and 3, conditions under which a traffic citation was issued, etc. With these are, and I'm gonna refer to the second page that I gave you of the complaints. And these are, if you can see the case number, which is 21C, these are the citizens' complaints that come into the Professional Standards Bureau. We have a detective every day who is assigned to the calls. So when a complaint comes in, they'll do their initial investigation, especially with the addition of all the body-worn cameras. It makes the detectives' jobs a lot easier, so they can immediately review the cameras and see if there's any, if it's a valid complaint or not, if it rises to, reasonable suspicion. If they can't investigate it there, then that gets referred to the district major, which goes down to the supervisor of that officer. And on that report over there, all the way to the right, there's a summary area, and that kind of just gives you what we've referred. If you go down to there's one of these the very first one listed on December 2nd, that actually was a citizen walk-in complaint for response to resistance, and I can't talk to the details, but that's currently under investigation. That was changed into a formal investigation. But the other ones are, speeding of the marked cars or unmarked cars, courtesy. It kind of just gives that brief explanation of what they are. In the third area I'm going to go over is performance infractions. And the definition of that is performance deficiencies identified by the immediate supervisor, which do not involve a third party. Examples of performance infractions may include, but are not limited to, at-fault accidents, tardiness, incompetence, insubordination, inappropriate work attire, or the last one, sleeping on duty as well. So that is that third list I provided, which has the investigative case types as 21D. The second one, that was a district complaint, which will then turn into a formal complaint. But a lot of these cases are missing extra duty jobs where an officer, works extra besides their normal duties for, you'll see off duty, like I work at the Raymond James Stadium for the Buccaneers. If an officer's late or doesn't show up, now that complaint, it comes through us, but then we send it to the district and then they investigate it. Also, a lot of these, if you see the district investigations, many are traffic crashes. Whether we're at fault or not, we're required to investigate all traffic crashes, not only at the scene, but administratively as well.
If you will, Captain, can you elaborate a little bit on case number 21C-205, which was closed, which was a walk-in citizen complaint, and the summary states that it was the wrong agency for complaint?
Yeah, a lot of times we'll get complaints from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office or Florida Highway Patrol. Recently we just received one from the Hillsborough County's jail deputy. So they think because they go online and they Google or they look for the number, then our number comes up and they call us, and then we explain to them and give them the number of the other agency where they need to call.
Thank you.
Question, Captain. On the same sheet, I notice quite a few summaries that deal with speeding. I'm assuming that's the person that was speeding and pulled over?
No, that's an officer driving. Like a lot of these, we have one person that accounts for all of them, who if they see a marked car driving, which they believe, because a lot of times we don't drive lights and sirens to calls. We very little do that because it causes more problems, especially when you're going through rush hour traffic than it creates. So what they do is, so if someone's going to a call, let's say it's a domestic call and the officer needs to get there, then they're gonna speed, but they're not gonna have their lights and sirens on. So sometimes the public thinks we're just driving around speeding, or, and then they'll report that, and we'll look it up.
And in most of those complaints, are they actually providing like specifics, like, identification of the actual.
Yeah,
police.
correct, that they write down the car numbers, because each of our cars have car numbers. So they'll write the car number down and then report that. And when we get it, then what we do is then that's, again, something less serious that the district investigates.
And is it just speeding that they're complaining about, or in some of these reports, are they complaining of like reckless driving?
No,
like
it's
endangerment?
speeding. I mean,
Just
going
speeding.
10 over, 5 over the speed limit, all the way up, some 20 over, depending. But it's not reckless driving, it's just speeding.
Okay, thanks.
If you will.
Question on the data. So are we going to start receiving this information on a monthly basis?
Yes, we provided that, as Attorney Schmid went over to, is every first business day of the month, we provide that to the chairperson.
Is there something that we can get where is more statistical information, X amount of like cases we received on speeding this month, and that way we can compare a trend analysis between month to month?
That's something that we can take in consideration.
Something of that nature, just to piggyback off of Mr. Valdez, that would have to reflect a closed case though, correct?
Correct, if it's open and they're caught, even a minor infraction, they're still covered under the Bill of Rights.
Dr. Collins?
Two questions. On this same page, one of two, under the origin, when we see all the citizen walk in, the internet phone calls, that will let us know exactly the origin. When it says district, does that mean that a person went into a district office? Like 1, 2,
Yes,
3?
anytime a complaint comes in, that's how we track complaints, it's put into it's called the AIM, it's the Administrative Incident Management System, so we can log, if they go into a district, make a complaint, they may not be satisfied with the answer they receive, and then they'll call us, and we know that, hey, there's a complaint, it was already looked at by the district and whatnot, but yeah, that's somebody coming in. So any complaints, in theory, are supposed to be entered into the system so we can track them.
Okay, so if someone went on the internet, and is there a way that they can download the form, and that's how they come to be mailed?
Well, we currently have is through the City of Tampa's Customer Service Center. If you go to our website, the TPD, Tampa Police Department website, and you go to Internal Affairs or Professional Standards Bureau, there's a link in that customer, and so they go online, and there's a little bit of a form or blocks they fill out, and that gets immediately sent to us, and we review that every morning. That's the first thing we do when we come in. So, and then then the second part of the ordinance is then there'll be a email set up, and we'll check that weekly, that if any complaints, if they go to the city's website for the Citizens Review Board, and they make that complaint, then that goes in as well. But when that comes in, we do log that in AIM, and we look at it and investigate it, obviously.
And the board won't have access to that email?
That would be a city T&I question, probably not, but we could provide any complaints that come in, a report of it.
I just want to make sure that once we start with the account, that there is a communication between the public, and that the public knows that if they're trying to reach us, they're not reaching us purposely, the members, but more so somebody from the department. So definitely want to make sure that, once a individual is emailing, we are actually responding with a notice that we acknowledge their email.
No, when that complaint comes in, then we'll review it, because we'll have to bring it in front of the board
For sure.
and explain it. Say, we received this through the
But I'm
Citizen
referring
Review
to
Board.
other email communication that may not be a complaint. It may be a comment, it may be an invitation to an event, or some sort of other communication that's not related to a complaint, but to the board for information. is what I'm referring
I
to.
don't think currently the website's set up to do that, no.
Okay, and I'm
Yeah, it's just complaint specific.
My other question is, how do a mail complaint get to you? That's what I was asking.
Mail, it comes in, all mail is monitored that comes in. This
Okay.
person, we have a mail room that checks it, and then forwards it to what department it's
So
addressed
there's a
to.
form that they can use if they wanted to download it, or do someone just write it up and send it to you?
Well, they can call, they can email, call. There's a brochure that we provide to people who come here, and also they're all in every district, so they can get that, and it explains in detail how a complaint can be made.
So that's how you get a mail complaint?
Yep, and then, or they just mail it in. A lot of times we receive just letters written, and, you know, we read it, we enter it into our, AIM tracking system,
Okay.
and then we investigate it.
I was just trying to make sure I understand how all of them come in. And then the other one, the last one on that page, 12-7, that run across, it says a citizen complaint came in through the internet. And then there's that only one that has a related incident number down at the bottom, and then it say it's closed. What happened on a situation like that? And then after one, I have one more question.
Well, the INET is our customer service program. So that's how, internally, if I talk to another police officer, I wouldn't say customer service, I'd say it's an INET complaint. That's how we've referred to it as. And then the one is an SRI, so something was written, because I don't have the details of it here at hand, but it's something we definitely could bring back, and it was closed.
Yeah, okay, that would be interesting to see what that was closed. And
Yeah,
then
the
the
way-
last question,
Well, just real quick, the way that our system, the AIM, we're looking to replace that hopefully, but the way that the current system is like an extra duty is a 21E, or a service related is a 21S, or a district, it's part of the tracking. So believe me, there's a lot of letters and sometimes I get confused.
yes, I want to know all those. Okay, and then my last question was back to page 4 of 13, I think. Might not have been page 4. Might have been the previous page. Page 3 of 13, or 520.
Oh, in the SOP?
Yes, and it's D,
Okay,
and it's under D1. It says inadequate investigation such as a failure to dust for prints. Do they still dust for prints?
oh yeah. Yes, we're required to go out and to say, you know, a citizen's home is burglarized, or an auto burglary, their car is burglarized. Yes, the officers are required to dust print. I mean, you see it on CSI, whatnot, there's not much science behind it. It's just really messy powder, a brush, and Scotch tape. And they, you know, the powder adheres to a person's sweat or whatnot that they leave behind to cause that impression, and it sticks to it, and then they take the tape and they put it over the print, and then that gets stuck to the tape, and then that gets submitted into, let's say if it's a identifiable print, then that goes into our AFIS, which is our automated fingerprint identification system that's run by, obviously, the FBI, and then hopefully we get a print off it.
So
and it'll
if someone asks the policeman to dust, and they do not dust, and if they want to file a complaint, this is what that would.
Yes, correct.
actually-
And that gets referred, and then the supervisor, the sergeant of that squad gets with that officer and asks why. I mean, there could be a valid reason. It's raining, it's outside, because when it's, you know, a wet car, it does no good. So, you know, and if there's a valid reason, or if the officer didn't do it, then the supervisor will address that.
Thank you.
You got any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Schoolmaster, and we wish you well with your endeavors in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you for serving us. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, and I'll see you in District 1.
We'll continue with the agenda under item H, CRB staff reports and business. We'll continue with Ms. Kamaria in reference to previous meeting discussion in reference to the adoption of modified rules of procedures and the adoption of the revised agenda format.
Good evening, Board. Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. I want to first discuss about the issues that we talked about at our last couple of agenda meetings, and that's the format of the agenda and how you would like to be able to address public comment or make motions regarding some public comment. So I've provided, this is a draft copy of your agenda format that we could use, the board could use moving forward. As you can see on the agenda, proposed agenda format, the items are renumbered and it's organized differently. But of most importance is that item This is going to be a new item, as previously discussed by Dr. Collins. There was a suggestion to keep cases on the agenda that have not been resolved yet, or that there's still some discussion that the board would like to take place. But there's been a previous case that the board heard that the board was not able to hear the conclusion or the full analysis of the disposition of the case because there was pending litigation. So this new format of the agenda allows the board to still see that those cases or those items are still for the board to discuss. And once the, in working with the staff, once we are able to determine that that case or that item has been concluded, we can update the board to let the board know, let you know that that item is now available for discussion if you would like to discuss that item at the next agenda. So this just keeps things organized so that the board will be able to know what's still pending that you've already heard, but you have not been able to conclude that discussion. Also, what's new on this proposed agenda format is under the second to last item is announcements/new business. At that time, if the board were to choose to make a motion regarding any of the public comment that was received at that meeting, you could certainly at that appointed time make your motions regarding any of the public comments that were received during that meeting. Also, in speaking with staff regarding this proposed agenda, staff will also be able to address the board if staff is aware of what that public comment was about, if the department is pursuing an investigation regarding the public comment. So under the item that says CRB staff reports and business, at that time, staff could also update the board at that time to address any public comment if they're aware of a conclusion of an investigation or a concern about a public comment. So this proposed format addresses the concerns that the board has had in the past regarding seeing those items still on the agenda so that they're not lost from the board or from the staff, and then also allowing the board to make motions regarding public comment at the new business section on the agenda. And I'm open to any other, yes.
So I love this.
Ms. Simmons?
With the continuation, I think it's important. I think I just have one suggestion, if that's okay. In that section, I think if you put, of course, we've got the case number, and maybe in parentheses, what month we heard the case for the first time. So initially presented, May 2021, or, because I know for me, I keep up with my notes by month of the meeting versus the case number, so that would be good.
Yes, ma'am. I will certainly include that.
A question, Mr.
You will.
So to go back on the public comments and then to possibly make a motion, so I'm just trying to understand that. So is that, just hypothetically, would you say a case of there's a comment made by which we feel that a certain action needs to be taken or a certain change in procedure, and so we will put that in the form of a motion?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and then you could do it at that time. For new business, you can make a motion to address a concern or a policy that you want staff to follow up on regarding that public comment, or if you have a concern, you can make a motion at that time regarding if there is any public comment that you want to provide, okay?
Thank you very much.
My only concern in reference to the draft under announcements and new business, in respect to our guests, it seems to be a little bit far down on the agenda. I would like to see it moved up to the public comment portion, just in case there is an officer present that can assist us with some dialogue. I would hate for them to have to stay within their entire meeting just to get to this particular part of the agenda.
Okay.
Question.
If you will, Reverend Banks.
Yes. Would it be standard operating procedure for staff to acknowledge public comment in some way if it's something that is ongoing, or if it's something that you'll take back to give consideration as opposed to public comment dropping on deaf ears, apparently. Nothing said about it.
If I understand your question, Reverend Banks, public comment is obviously received and it's recorded during the meetings. Are you asking if staff can just say we come up after that comment is made to say we've received it?
Well, during that section where you say, where staff reports in business,
Yes.
rather than not saying anything about the public comments or giving us some assurance that something is being done about what the public's concerns are, so that we don't have to attempt to address it without some feedback from staff prior to. Of course, the chairman's comments are well taken. It's so far down in the agenda, the public may not know that we heard their concern and attempted to address it in some way, whether it's to refer to staff for some type of disposition.
I understand what you're saying. I could certainly move the, or, working with staff, we could certainly have a portion at that staff, the CRB staff reports in business for them to address whatever public comment. If they are aware of the status of the public comment, we could certainly do that. But also, Mr. Chair, I could modify the language for the public comment portion to say that CRB staff will, acknowledges any public comments that are received and will do the necessary follow-ups regarding any of the public comments. So I could modify the public comment speech that is traditionally read by the vice chair. So I could modify that language to show that the CRB staff will certainly address any complaints or issues that are brought up during the public comment.
Yeah, it may not necessarily be appropriate to attempt to resolve the issue on
Right.
the spot.
Right.
But to acknowledge that we received it and that something will be done so that they can close the loop, so to speak.
Yes, sir, I understand. I will certainly modify that for the next meeting for the public comment for the vice chair to provide that updated information. I appreciate your feedback.
And will yours be moved up?
Yes, and as well as possibly moving the announcements, new business closer on the agenda to the public comment portion, just in respect of our guests that may have knowledge of that particular comment. That way we can kind of keep things within the same arena, so to speak, and not keep our guests waiting throughout the entire meeting.
I'll move that entire section up after public comment.
Announcement and new business?
I'm sorry?
I was saying announcement and new business.
Yes, ma'am, I will move the announcement / new business all the way up to after the public comment. That whole entire section, I'll move that up to right after the public comment. I can't hear you.
Is it possible, 'cause I like the current agenda as far as announcements where we disclose the next meeting and things of that nature towards the end of the agenda. Is it possible that we can separate announcements from new business? Or is that extended?
It's the desire of the board.
And that's where my question.
But we could
was.
also put the new meeting date at the bottom as what's traditionally on how your agenda is.
I think what my concern is usually new business come after you've done everything else. And then when we're getting ready to adjourn, I like where you have it with announcement. I agree with some kind of way, if there's something that could be put either with public comments or directly under public comments. So in the event that there's a need to address it, we can address it then. And I don't know what's right or what's best to go there. I don't know. But I like where you got announcement and new business personally, because I wouldn't want to see it way up at the top of the agenda. But I do agree, when people come in sometimes, what can we say to them? And we've had that problem happen a lot.
I could add a section after the public comment entitled staff response to public comment, so that it's right afterwards, and then we can keep everything else as far as announcements or, new business separated.
Yeah,
I
that
like
sounds
that.
good. I like
Okay.
that, yeah.
Yeah, because it shows that.
And if we can
the
take staff
is
and board
sensitive to
response,
the-
because we may want to ask something of staff. So if it's staff/board response to the public comment, and then leave that, because I like where you got that down below.
So, Ms. Kamari, are you gonna, redraft an agenda? Could we make a motion on what was discussed tonight?
Well, I have taken note. I will add the section that says staff response or staff/board response to public comment, and everything else, as the board has discussed, you're okay with the format as presented. With that note in mind, I can modify the draft, modify the agenda moving forward. I would just ask for a motion to approve the change in the agenda format.
So moved with the
Second.
suggested changes from the board.
And I
Second.
second it. Okay, that's good.
Board member Demetra Simmons had made a motion to adopt the revised agenda format. Dr. Carolyn Collins has seconded the motion to adopt the revised agenda format. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed, please show by raise of hand. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the extra effort as well.
I appreciate the feedback. The last item that I wanted to discuss with the board is I worked hard on revising your rules of procedure that falls in line with the updated ordinance that was passed. I handed each of you a pamphlet or the actual rules of procedure. They are the Citizens Review Board Rules of Procedure. They are 6 pages. I've broken down the rules of procedure to explain what the purpose is, giving definitions of officers, duties, members, elections, terms. We can go through each section of this rules of procedure if the board prefers, but page 2 gives the officers and duties section. Page 3 explains section 3 explains the coordinator and the board attorney, what those positions entail. The next section is, section 4 is regarding the meetings and conduct of meetings and how the meeting is to take place. And then section 5 talks about matters to review, and this is obviously falls in line with the ordinance that was passed by City Council, and it discusses the matters in which the CRB can review. Section 6 goes into the voting and recommendations by the board, and I broke down that section as to the, and I provided this information in your binder about the motions that you can make during specific instances. And also, in this revised rules of procedure, it has the recommendations that the board can make. So if the board does not have any particular questions, again, the purpose of the rules of procedure is to govern your meetings and to give definitions to the public about the process for the board. But the ordinance that was passed gives the overall framework for how this board functions. And again, the rules of procedure are here to help you organize how to conduct business when you're in a meeting. If there aren't any questions, I know this is a lot of information in one night. If the board is ready to proceed with a motion to adopt the modified rules of procedure, or if there's any discussion of the rules, I'm here to answer any questions.
Yes, if you will, Dr. Collins.
You've done a tremendous amount of work here, everyone getting us ready for this, and it's most appreciative. But can we make a motion to receive it tonight and then review it and approve it?
Yes, ma'am. We could review it and approve it at the next meeting if that's the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, because I just would like to read over.
So moved.
Okay.
So moved. Any further discussion in reference to adopting the rules of procedure according to the new ordinance?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have one question.
If you will, Vice Chair, Mr. Reyes.
To the city attorney. So, in between our meetings then, as we're reviewing it at home, if we have any questions protocol-wise? Do we just,
You can email me if you
Send it
have
to
any,
you.
yes, you can email me if you have any questions. I gave everyone my card, many meetings ago, but I can give you my card again if you lost my, I email you guys,
Right.
quite
We have
often,
your
so.
email. Thank you.
Just, you can email me if there's particular questions, I can answer those quickly, just so that you'll be prepared at the next meeting to, be prepared to adopt the rules of procedure.
Thank you.
Without copying everyone else.
Correct.
Right, exactly, exactly.
So the motion was just to receive it tonight. Okay.
But was there, if, I didn't hear, Mr. Chair, a second to the motion from Reverend Banks?
Yeah, oh, I thought it was second.
I didn't hear it.
I didn't hear a second
I thought
to
she
the
was
motion.
carrying the motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Mr. Valdez did the second.
Board Member Carlos Valdez has seconded the motion. We'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor, show by raise of hand. Any opposed, show by raise of hand. The motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Camaria.
You're welcome.
We'll now continue with item I, announcements for the next meeting.
Mr. Chair, I do have something that I would like to bring to the board. I would like to see if either down the road or even tonight, we can propose to start a community engagement committee where we can work with the committee and be able to work with Tampa PD as well to do different events and be able to be out in the grounds with the public and being able to go beyond than this room, beyond than this single one meeting. So definitely when I talk about different events, I talk about like having a tent at an event with booth where event goers can communicate with us and we can talk about our function and how all of those processes work. Definitely have a pamphlet. That's why my email question came up, because if we're out and about, we'd like to have some form of material that the public can communicate with us, not to file complaints, but definitely to be able to be a face of the board out in the community and build those relationships. So definitely would like to see if we can start a community engagement committee, so we can either make a motion tonight to start that conversation and start that group, or B, we can have more discussion next board meeting around this topic. And I did.
If you will, Ms. Simmons.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna do something like that, then we should schedule time outside of our monthly meeting to develop a charter and a purpose, and, I mean, what you're talking about having tents, like, the budget for that, you know, so I think it would be premature to vote to establish it, but we could set time aside to schedule, like, developing a charter for what that committee's responsibilities and charge would be.
Yes, and also in the new ordinance, we will have the opportunity to engage in the community. It is written that we will actually have meetings outside of this particular hall in different communities, in various districts as well. In the past, we participated in community forums with Tampa Police Department, and there's other events that we will be welcome to as well. So some of those things is a great point. Some of those things were brought up in the creation of the new ordinance. And again, this is the first meeting of the new ordinance. However, some of the things that you mentioned was great ideas, and it is being addressed. And I think we will have the opportunity to do some of those things within this particular term. And just if you will, Ms. Camaria, I was also concerned, I guess we can discuss this on the announcements, that I believe that the annual report will also be sent out to City Council upcoming as well. So that may be something that need to be discussed as a board because that presentation is coming up on the calendar as well.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Staff and I, we spoke about that annual report. I think by the next meeting we can give an update, but it's not coming up soon for City Council meeting. We'll ensure that the board is prepared for that.
Because it will come. The report will
Okay.
come to the board first.
Yeah, it has to come to the board first before it goes to city council.
Okay.
And we could discuss that more at the next meeting. And the next meeting, if you could announce that for the record, Mr. Chair.
The next meeting will be held on the fourth Tuesday of the month of February, which falls on the 22nd. So that will be February 22nd of 22. So that's 2/22/22 at 6 p.m. here at Old City Hall of 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33602, third floor. Board members, for any reason you're unable to attend the next meeting, please notify our clerk, Ms. Tanya Wilcox, at least 48 hours in advance so we can ensure a voting quorum. Before I adjourn this meeting, I'd like to give any of the board members the opportunity to add any final comments or statement at this time. If you will, Ms. Simmons.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you guys. I've enjoyed serving with you. This is my last meeting. My term is up. I see some of my OGs that we were original back in 2015, and just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity to serve, but tonight will be my last meeting, so thank you.
Thank you for your service. We appreciate all the comments and ideas that you have brought to the table to help form the board as it seems fit today. You're gonna be greatly missed, and we wish you well with your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Yes, and,
Dr. Collins.
okay, I had to let my tears flow. Yes, most definitely, I ditto the chair's comment. I want to kind of make this as a statement to the board. I did make a call, and I asked last month, and I called the chair of the council. If Omicron does a much better job that they're projecting it's going to do, and if the positivity rate decline rather than continue to go up, and hopefully we don't get another variant, we are fine. But I did call and ask the question why the dividers were taken down. And they indicated that it was okay, nobody had questioned it, and they say maybe that's just your medical background, and maybe it is. But I did ask about it, about both the dividers and the mask. And I know I kind of wear the mask, but I am healthcare conscious. That's just me. And that's the way I am. So I wanted to put that on record tonight, because if it continues to go up, I don't ever want to see us get in the position where we were before when the virus first started, and we had about 6 months or so or more without any meetings. I do not want us to go back to that point. And if we could make ourselves safer by putting the dividers up and wearing our masks, I would rather do that rather than us to be absent from the community and the community engagements and the pieces, as you just stated, that we need to do. So I wanted to put that on the record tonight, because if it keeps going up, I'm going to come here and protect myself by saying, I'm present, and then I'm going to leave. Okay, that's it. I'm just being upset.
Just the comment, I think everyone is concerned about everyone's safety. I am aware of individuals are taking the necessary steps to ensure a clean, safe environment. We're all observing and making the necessary steps moving forward to ensure everybody's safety. Thank you for that point, and that's something that we must continue to observe and make necessary changes as we move forward. Any other final comments or statements? Thank you. Please be safe. The Citizen Review Board is now adjourned. Yes.
So you would still, regardless, because your other shed is already on a foundation, you'd still need the rear yard setback anyway.